Hello, everyone. Give us just one moment. We're going to wait a little bit until to let a couple more people join us. Thank you. Just another minute or so, and we'll get started. All right, Manish, I think we'll get started. So hello, everyone. And welcome to NetElixir's Amazon Prime Day Playbook, Winning in a Cautious Economy. My name is Samantha, and I'm the marketing manager here at NetElixir. We're so glad to have you join us today. Before we get started, just a quick note on the console. On the right-hand side, you should be able to see an audience chat, so feel free to engage throughout the session. And there should be a Q&A box as well. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll be answering some of your questions live. So feel free to submit as we go through everything, and we might even answer a couple of them along the way. So for those of you who are new to us, NetElixir is an AI-first digital marketing agency helping e-commerce brands grow profitably online. We've been perfecting our growth formula for over 20 years, delivering data-driven strategies that drive real business results. Today's conversation is a little bit part of our commitment to keeping our community informed and empowered. And before I introduce today's speakers, I also want to share something close to our hearts. Through Dawn Trust Foundation, NetElixir helps provide young girls in India with access to education and the opportunity to break the cycle of poverty. We're incredibly proud of the students we've been able to sponsor and are always grateful for those who support this mission. So let's meet today's speakers. Kicking us off is Manish, our Senior Director of Brand Strategy here at NetElixir. With over 13 years of experience, Manish specializes in helping e-commerce brands grow through smart acquisition and retention strategies. He's been with NetElixir for 10 years and has led our performance marketing and marketplace teams. Joining us very shortly is Shivali, Senior Brand Evangelist at Helium 10. Shivali is a passionate advocate for brand growth and has built multiple businesses in the wellness space. At Helium 10, she works closely with sellers to help them scale their platform-powered tools. And before I hand it off to Manish, a little bit about today's session. So Manish will walk us through NetElixir's predictions for this year's Prime Day performance. And then Shivali will be joining us for a Q&A styled fireside chat. And then we'll open up the floor to any questions along the way. So Manish, please, and kick it off to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. We usually have a lot of great insights and hacks to share with all of you today, primarily focused on driving a successful Amazon Prime Day. Prime Day has now kind of become one of the biggest e-commerce events of the year, and it sort of sets the tone for the holiday season in Q4. While Prime Day has mostly been about big deals and sort of driving planned and impulse shopping, this year specifically, things are looking a little different. More importantly, the 2025 Prime Day can be very different based on whether you are a brand selling directly versus a reseller, your sourcing arrangement, your overall margin structure, And lastly, if your product is something that's a must have versus a good to have. And what all of this essentially means for you is that you have to operate with a lot more precision instead of just throwing around a bunch of deals or promotions on Amazon. With that context, we will start off with three big trends that we are seeing this year. And we'll then talk about what, as brands, what do you do with those trends? Number one, and most importantly, consumers are entering Prime Day this year with a short list, right? It is not a blank check. And we expect that this will sort of continue through Prime Day, where consumers have already done or are in the process of planning their Prime Day purchases. We also believe they have already narrowed down on their main needs and they have a short list of brands or products. The real question is, you as a brand, have you made it to that short list today? Again, it's not late. If you've already made it, how do you continue staying top of mind without hurting your margins? If you have not made it to that list, how can you profitably make your way into that consideration set before it's too late? The second trend, which is again worth noting, and this is honestly a departure from some of the previous, Prime Day events that we've had in the last few years, is that customers are looking for actual value. And this may sound a little weird because Amazon is all about deals, promotions, last minute orders, and things like that. And don't get me wrong, customers will still hunt down deals wherever they find it. But the difference we expect this year is that while they're looking for a great bargain, they're also going an extra mile and looking for some sort of value in those deals. And as all of you know, value is a very broad term. It can mean obviously different things to different people. We will talk about what this means in our next segment. And third, and this is where Amazon Prime obviously opens up a lot of opportunities this year specifically, is that brand discovery is on the rise. And we all know that Amazon is no longer a lower funnel platform, which is just meant for last minute conversions. It has been very much a brand discovery platform. But the reason we are calling this out specifically as a trend this year is that in this environment of sort of cautious spending, customer sentiment being a little low, what we are also finding out through our clients and talking to customers is that they are open to exploring new brands if you really have a strong value proposition, which means the fact that they have been loyal to you over the last few years is good, but it in no way guarantees that they will come back to your brand again if you run a deal. And that is a big call out for many brands, especially the more established brands that have been on Amazon for a long time. What this means from a tactical perspective is that there has been never been a better opportunity for small and mid-sized brands or even disruptor or challenger brands to grab market share from competitors. So these were some of the trends that we are seeing, and trends are great. You obviously have to stay on top of them, but the real value is taking action based on those trends. And we specifically have narrowed down there are obviously so many things you can do. And in my second section, where Shivali will join us for a Q&A, we'll get into a lot more tactical recommendations on how platforms like Helium 10 can be leveraged to have a successful Prime Day. But first and foremost, based on our experience as an agency over the last about 21 years, we've had the opportunity to work with various kind of Amazon brands, right? Ones that are starting off, some of them have been moderately established on Amazon. Some of them are ones where they have a very strong D2C as well as an Amazon engine driving their top line revenue. Based on all the research we have done, we narrowed our research down to three basic takeaways here. First, get your ASINs right. And as basic as it may sound, the reason again that we are calling this out is during Prime Day, there is obviously a big tendency for brands to focus on your top sellers, go back to data from the last 1 or 2 years, and blindly drive with that as a Prime Day strategy. While that may still work for some brands, that may not be the key this year. And again, I'll get into more details on that in a bit. The second one is discount is key, but do it right with bundles and never ever lose focus on profitability, especially given the environment that most of you are operating in right now, where either due to the tariffs or due to the inventory situation, your margins may already be on the thinner side. And lastly, from a growth standpoint, drive demand with DSP. DSP, in my opinion, has been probably the most exciting thing to happen to Amazon in a long time. And what I mean is, it's not that it's new; it's been around for about 8 years now. But the way DSP has bounced back, especially this year, in terms of impact for small and mid-sized brands, and the ability for DSP to scale at a profitable level has been astounding. So there's a lot that can be done on the DSP side. So now let's dive deeper into each of these recommendations. For the ASIN prioritization, what we are recommending here, very philosophically speaking, is look at the past, the present, and the future of your top ASINs. And what this essentially means is do not start by looking at your best sellers. The reason for that is during Prime Day, customers have a short window to convert, and you have a very small window to convince them of your credibility and the fact that you are a trusted brand on Amazon. That essentially ties back to two things. From a past data standpoint, look at your ASINs from the perspective of if they had a strong engagement rate in the past, most likely in the recent past. And secondly, what sort of reviews do these products have? And when I talk about reviews, there are two angles to it. You have to look at the quality and the quantity. Quantity is easy. You're looking at products with the highest number of reviews. More importantly, look at the ratio between the number of reviews versus the traffic you are getting. And I would love for Shivali to jump in on that later. She had recently done a podcast on this. Secondly, look at the quality of the reviews. And Amazon, obviously, thanks to AI, has made it very easy. You get a very good overview of the reviews from the recent customers. If that does not have a positive tone, please think again before you focus on this particular ASIN for your Prime Day. So if that is the way in for a customer to your brand, the conversion rate is extremely important. Do not focus on that particular SKU. Moving on from a present readiness standpoint, and this is again thanks to all the craziness that we are surrounded by right now with tariffs, the consumer sentiment being low. You have to focus on the high margins and the products that have ample inventory, because the last thing you want is get the orders in, and if you're unable to fulfill them with the inventory being low, that is not a good user experience. And on the flip side, if you drive a lot of sales and lightning deals to your low margin products, your top line may look very strong. But as we all know, as sellers on Amazon, it's not easy when it comes to an actual ROI. So that is why the high margin SKUs with the inventory combination becomes extremely important. Lastly, this is where a lot of planning has to go in. And again, this is an area where agencies like NetElixir can definitely help you out. Focus on the future value. And what we mean by that is try to focus on products that have not had a very strong history when it comes to returns. Again, it's easy to drive revenue and conversions during Prime Day. The last thing you want is have a great Prime Day and then see a bunch of them being returned in the next 30 days. So focus on products that tend to stay with the customer, have low return rates, and potentially bring you a repeat customer in the next 3 to 6 months, preferably before the year ends. These three focus areas will help you ensure that you're focusing on the right products. Okay. Once you've identified what you want to sell, step two is focusing on the right kind of discounting. And this is where it gets very tricky. Whether you have 10 ASINs, whether you have 100 ASINs, the complexity remains the same. And what we are recommending this year, which again might be a slight departure from the previous years, is rather than going in for one big deal, plan a tiered discount strategy. The reason for that is one, there is a lot of uncertainty. A tiered discount strategy helps you plan better. It helps you be nimble and move things around if for some reason the first promotion does not work as you expected. But do this for the products where the margin makes sense. On the contrary, let's say you're sitting on some excess inventory due to whatever happened in the first half of the year. Plan a lightning deal just to get rid of that inventory and have a separate plan for your other products. Once you identified the discount strategy, step two here is to figure out a comfortable ASIN threshold that you can operate within. One mistake that most brands do is to operate with a very strict ACOS number instead of a range. And as we all know, events like Prime Day come with a lot of uncertainty behind it. So figure out a range where you feel comfortable and have a plan B and a plan C. Plan B is if your sales are better than what you thought, how much can you really loosen up? Plan C, if things don't go well, how much do you tighten the screw and pull back so that overall ROI can be maintained? And that obviously goes into the profit analysis. And something that NetElixir has done to enable brands like you is we built a real-time profitability calculator that exactly helps you do this down to the ASIN level. And you can actually control your Amazon ecosystem pretty much like a stock portfolio where you're moving things around in real time. And the last trend we have is the demand capture with DSP. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this has been a big revelation, I think, for a lot of brands this year, irrespective of whether you are a small, mid, or an enterprise brand. Customers are obviously doubling down on their pre-Prime Day research. And honestly, the easiest way for you to make it to that consideration set right now is DSP, especially if you are not participating in a Prime deal through Amazon this year. And the context here is that a lot of sellers have backed out of Prime Day due to all the economic, conditions that are surrounding them. What that means is, for those of you who are still good, either on the inventory or on the tariff side, there is still time. With fewer competitors, one of the auction pillars is out, so you're potentially looking at lower CPMs and lower CPCs. So use DSP very selectively to target people who are in your category and are in market. They are on your brand, they're browsing, they're abandoning the cart, and conquest from your competitors' affinity segment. And there are many more that can be done. So those were some of the high-level ideas that we had for Prime Day 2025. With that, let me invite Shivali. I believe. Hey, Shivali.
Hi,
Welcome to
how
the
are
show.
you?
Doing good, doing good. I know you have been very busy over the last few days with a lot of Prime Day related events.
Yes,
So glad that you could make it today.
thanks for
And
having me.
awesome. So one of the sort of takeaways for everyone who's attending this webinar today is thanks to our partnership with Helium 10, and we've been long-term partners with Helium on a wide range of their tech stack. One of the giveaways today is anyone who's attending the webinar today, you can request a very customized Amazon competitive insights report, which will go really deep into your brand and up to 4 of your competitors. And we can actually come back to you with very specific insights on what their market share is, what are some of their top ASINs by revenue, by sales, some level of forecasting, and we'll also help you with some listing audit with AI-backed recommendations. All of this is meant to help you to have a stronger, Prime Day. With that, Shivali would love to have a quick introduction from you, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Sure. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Shivali Patel. I'm an Amazon seller. I sell both digital and physical products on Amazon, as well as a senior brand evangelist at Helium 10. If you don't know Helium 10, we are an all-in-one software suite of tools for the Amazon, Walmart, and TikTok shop seller now. So we are branching out because I think in this day and age, multi-channel is kind of the way to go, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And if you know one process on one of the channels, you can typically kind of function on all the other ones. So anyways, whether you are just getting started or maybe you've been around the block for quite some time, we really do have tools for every segment of the Amazon seller's journey. That means product research, keyword research, listing, optimization, marketing, ads, whatever it is, you name it, we have it. And we do case studies very frequently to make sure that we are staying up to date in the actual time with the tariff situation, with discounts, with Prime days. And that's really what I'm here for today. I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad that I was invited out by the team. And yeah, I'm ready to kind of dive in and see what we can do for people.
Awesome. Perfect. Shivali, so let's dive right in. So first and foremost, I want to get the elephant in the room addressed. There's obviously a lot of speculation, Shivali, that this year we may finally see a 4-day Prime event versus the traditional 2-day event that we always had. But again, as of now, this is more of a speculation. But yeah, would love to know if it happens, from your opinion, what should brands do differently?
I actually believe it is definitive that Prime Day is being extended for 4 days. And that naturally means it comes with a lot more time for us to get in front of the audiences, get more visibility. And at the same time, that might be a bit of a gamble because that also entails more competition, more fatigue. And I think as brands and sellers, we really need to treat the event more so as a mini Q4. We need to start thinking about the strategy now. So if you haven't, I mean, by now you should have submitted your deals, but also going in and maybe raising the price so that way the coupons will make sense for you and you can ensure that the profitability stays there, alongside figuring out your click share, your conversion share, and seeing that, you know what, actually my competitors are getting more of the clicks right now. What do I need to change about my main images? Or I'm getting the click share, but the conversion share is suffering a little bit. So what in my listing can I tweak right now to make sure that by the time Prime Days is here, you are not trying to adjust things mid-event. In fact, you know that it's going to be good to go. But of course, use day 1 and day 2 to hit the hardest. Day 3 and 4 can be a little bit more retargeting and upselling.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think the one other takeaway here, I think for everyone in the room, is that this essentially talks about the kind of nimbleness that is needed to survive in a market like we are in right now. Because if a beast like Amazon can move from a 2-day to a 4-day event, it just means that as brands and smaller retailers, we have to be even more nimble and get creative. As Shivali said, do things a little differently and plan out the 4 days, because you still have the same inventory, you have a limited stock to play around with. How do you stretch it out, without leading to any sort of fatigue there? Perfect. Second, and we addressed some of the Shivali early in the webinar today, but understandably with the cautious sort of shopping environment that we have and tighter margins, how do brands rethink their overall Prime Day strategy without necessarily relying exclusively on deep discounts?
This is going to be really dependent on the niche you're in. And I remember hearing you kind of say only offer discounts if it keeps you profitable, especially after all the changes. Obviously, discounts help. And as a consumer, I think we all can attest to the fact that we love discounts. We love receiving value for the products, especially good quality products. But that is not the only lever to think about as a seller. So if you can't slash your prices, what I recommend doing is doubling down on value. Is there something that you can add in as a bundle? Or maybe even if you can quickly insert in some sort of digital product that can really elevate your value that you're providing in your physical products. You can highlight limited time bonuses. You can upgrade your images. Use that social proof really to your benefit, even by running something that is off platform. Amazon loves external traffic. And that is one of the things we kind of talk about in our Helium 10 Prime Day checklist that we recently came out with. You want to also lock in your conversions. Like I said before, make sure that everything in your listing is really good to go. And then like Manish said earlier, if you have slow moving inventory, focus on moving those. So that way you can recoup some of your cash. You're not just letting all your money pass you by in advertising spend or in storage fees. Cash flow and consistency is really going to be your most important things that you want to be looking out for, because Amazon likes to see that you've stayed in stock. Don't look at just the small picture, but really the big picture is this going to work long term? Some other things that you can really do is focus on PPC, on the high intent bottom funnel keywords. Use rules and automations inside of Helium 10. So if you don't know about the rules and automations, as opposed to kind of going in and tweaking each of your campaigns, especially if you have thousands of SKUs, that can be really time consuming. But instead you can go in and let's say put in your for a specific campaign, maybe you want to find the ones that have greater than 50% ACoS or lower than 60% ACoS, and then say, if this happens, then this will happen. And you can literally go in and tweak things and even move, harvest new keywords, put in negative keyword targeting. So a lot of the functionality of this can be set in a way where you're not going through having to spend hours and hours trying to manage all of your campaigns. We also just came out with something called Budget Manager. And this is not for everybody that's listening in. I think there's tiers, the same way Manisha's talked about tiered coupons, right? You want to kind of go in with a tiered strategy. If you are a beginner or, just kind of getting started, don't worry so much about what I'm about to explain. But if you have a diamond plan, then Budget Manager should be rolling out to the diamond plan very, very soon. It was first launched to our elite members on May 13th. But basically what it's for is it gives you full control over your entire account as opposed to just the campaign levels. So you can literally go in and set a monthly budget, daily budgets, and then even be given a calendar where you can actually say on a particular day. So right now you can go in and say, for July, when Prime Week happens, I want 100% utilization or more, 100% more utilization on these specific days. So you can set the monthly budget, say, I want to do 10,000 for this month, as opposed to maybe this month you're doing 6,000 in spend for a budget. But next month, I want to set it for 10,000. And on this particular 4 days, I want to have over 100% for budget. And then turn on something like auto pacing, which is what we have inside of Budget Manager. And that way you'll spend more on those days, less on the other days. And overall, you'll be within your budget to make sure that you are still profitable. It just gives you the flexibility without sacrificing profitability.
Great points, Well. I think obviously there are a lot of takeaways there.
Yeah.
Not everything would make sense for everyone, but depending on where you are in your sort of Amazon journey right now, I think there's something for everyone. One thing I want to get a little deeper into is really what you mentioned early on. It's about the data that's coming into Amazon, and that's always a tricky topic. Not many brands are comfortable sharing the first-party data with Amazon. But having said that, again, in the spirit of being adventurous and doing things differently this year, something that we've also started recommending to customers is, if you have a truly omni-channel strategy where you're comfortable getting a customer in either through D2C or Amazon, and if you're doing DSP and if you have access to Amazon Marketing Cloud, AMC, there is an option for you to upload your first party data onto the Amazon side and truly look at it from a consumer standpoint, especially when you've had, let's say, a soft Q1 and Q2, and you really want to use Prime Day to make up for the drop that you had in the first half of the year, irrespective of whether the customer is coming through D2C or Amazon. Uploading your first party data to Amazon can also make sure that they sort of continue the journey, because at many times the customer is not just looking for a deal, they just want an easier shopper experience. Correct. Which we can all agree, I think, Amazon sort of leads in that.
Yeah, I think if you can really resonate with your customer, kind of meet them where they're at, you can end up having more conversions for sure.
Perfect. Next, I think, and none of the strategy, none of the planning makes sense as long as we don't understand what the buyer intent is. And the sooner we can do it, the better it is. So specifically taking the focus to Helium 10, Shivali, what tools or what signals do you look for to understand buyer intent leading up to Prime Day?
I'm a very big fan of using history to predict the future. And so I would really start with keywords, right? Because if you have smart targeting, that really outperforms any sort of reckless discounting you might end up doing, right? Or even fun discounting for our consumers. So going into Cerebro, you have a place, and hopefully those of you who actually use Cerebro know what I'm talking about. We have a feature inside of our reverse ASIN keyword research tool that lets you click into historical trends. And in doing that, you can click last July, because I believe Prime Day was July 16th and 17th last year. You can go back, take a look at that particular month, click into it, and then maybe click this month, June. And when you go in for a particular ASIN and you select those 2 months for historical trends, now you're finding all those keywords that might have the search volume that you're looking for. Maybe you were ranking this month, but not last year, or last year you were ranking for it and not this year. And you can get really good visibility on, okay, which keywords have all of a sudden fallen out of my strategy, or maybe I need to put them back up. Something else that really sticks very truly to the line of use history to predict the future is utilizing our search query analyzer. I believe this is also a diamond function that we have, but I love Search Query Analyzer. It's one of our most valuable tools. It was something that was asked by Helium 10 customers for a long time, and it's based on search query performance data. So if you don't know search query performance, all this for search volume specifically is based on denormalized search. So anytime you're in Helium 10 and you're looking at search volume for Cerebro, you might have one number for search volume, but in Search Query Analyzer, you'll see a different one, and that's because it's pulling from Amazon. So this means, let's say your customer is going and typing in something like coffin shelf. I use coffin shelf not because I'm a morbid person, but it's one of our case study products that we do at Helium 10. And so let's say they typed in coffin shelf, and then they went to page 2, went to page 3. Those are all searches. Whereas if you went to page 1, then you clicked back out, and then you clicked back in, that's again another search. And so that number is highly inflated. And what you can do inside of Search Query Analyzer is really go in and check out your impressions. It layers in the data from your search query performance reports in with Helium 10 data and does all the calculations for you, as opposed to using some sort of spreadsheet. And so if your impression share, let's say, is higher than the search volume, well, now you know you're showing up for organic and for sponsored placements. Whereas if you're not, well, that means you might need to up your ad spend to make sure you are having the additional visibility on that page. Plus, we have something called match type inside of the Search Query Analyzer, which lets you quickly filter for those keywords. Now, let's say one of the match types that we actually have tells you where your your conversion is lower than the market conversion. That means you need to go in and tweak your listing, because there's something going on where your conversions aren't happening the way that the standard market is converting, correct? Whereas the alternative of that is, let's say you do have really great conversion share compared to the market. That means you want to double down on your ads, right? So a lot of really great data that you can then utilize to get ahead of what's happening for Prime Week is make sure that all of that is in good positioning. So that way, by the time that you are experiencing increased traffic for Prime Week, you have the conversions that also follow up with that. I also recommend adding competitors to your insights dashboard. So you have all of the changes in one place. Let's say your competitor adds a new coupon, they change their price, there's a change in their ranking. Something happens, you can see it happen and take action if you need to.
I think the last thing, what you mentioned, Shivali, I think on the competitor side, one of the other ways we've been also looking at it, especially this year, is that when you look at last year's data, that becomes sort of the baseline, like you said, that's a history and that becomes your sort of inspiration. But then you also do a quick look back to how things are right now, let's say May and June. You may see some top movers there, right? Some folks who were very established last year, but due to the current tariff situation, or maybe the sourcing was not set up properly, they might be having a temporary change of plans. And that can possibly open up an opportunity for a smaller brand to grab market share. So that's another way in which some of these tools can also be very handy.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Awesome. So we spoke a lot about what should people do, and in an event like Prime Day, when there's so much going on, what are some of the common insights that tend to get overlooked, Shivali? And again, based on your experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces. I think it's easy to maybe, lose one or two. We tend to focus on, let's say, kind of running with what you just said, right? Like focusing on what's happening right now. If we find that there's a new keyword that's all of a sudden boosted with high volume keyword, right? There's a lot of great search volume happening. We might be very tempted to say, okay, let's incorporate this into our strategy. But that doesn't mean that you leave behind those rising star ones that maybe don't have the search volume just yet, right? Maybe by day 3 or 4 of Prime Day, you are really going to end up seeing that boost. So it is good to hone in and make sure you are covering your bases. Also, I recommend having boost turned on if you're using Helium 10's keyword tracker. So if you don't do something like that, right? Let's say you put all your ducks in a row and you did everything, but then you don't know where you're actually ranking for your keywords. Well, that's no good either, right? So you want to be able to see where your product is stacking up. And so going into keyword tracker, clicking the little rocket ship icon that you see is going to make sure that you're refreshing your rankings every single hour for the next 10 days, and then you just turn it back on. So that way you are always in the know. Another thing is, for example, what I just talked about with Search Query Analyzer, you might end up having questions like, well, why am I getting sales, but my organic rank isn't moving? And that's really where you can leverage Search Query Analyzer. Take a look at how your impressions are compared to the search volume that Amazon provides to you. Check your conversion rate. Is it lower or greater than your competitors? Is your listing in tip-top shape, right? All of these things will really help you stay in focus and profitable for Prime Day. And I think, if I haven't mentioned it before, I know I mentioned the Prime Day checklist. It's h10.me/Prime Day checklist. There's 28 different strategies in there that are just checkboxes. Like, go in, make sure that you are really doing those things. So that way you're not overlooking anything in the Prime Day rush.
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned about listings, I think I know we didn't talk as much about listings in the beginning. And that's what tends to happen, right? You get sort of carried away with the numbers, all the fun stuff around margins and data. But at the end of the day, that is what a customer is sort of consuming, is your listing. And there is so much that can be done on the listing front, whether it's your actual listing optimization, the images that you have, the secondary images that can potentially be infographics with some sort of social proof, even calling out your reviews and things that matter to your customer, and taking it a step further and looking at your A+ content and how exactly does your brand store enable a Prime Day customer. Those are obviously things that should be in your checklist as well. Now on the flip side, Shivali, if, let's say, again, as we all know, in the world of marketing, things don't always work out the way you want it to. If for some reason you're halfway through Prime Day, day 1, day 2, things are not going as well as you thought, what do you do at that point, right? What are some of the low-hanging fruits, some quick levers that you can pull to try and do some sort of damage control?
Of course, the coupons being number one. You can always test a higher coupon very temporarily to get you that initial momentum, and then go back to the pricing that you had, and hopefully the momentum kind of picks you forward. Make sure, again, that you've audited all your listing visuals and pricing beforehand. I really would stress doing that now, making sure that the conversion is there. So that's not one of those things that you're worrying about, because by the time that you're testing something like that mid-event, you're really not going to know how it's performing. The goal is really to just get all of it taken care of ahead of time.
Absolutely. One call out again, this is something that we've seen as an agency over the last so many years. And honestly, this is not something that really happens on Amazon, but even on other platforms. During a big event like Prime Day, data lag and attribution delay becomes a big pain point. It's if you're relying on real-time data to make those decisions, there is a possibility that the numbers may not look as great as they actually are. So always have a baseline based on engagement rates. So if you know that there are certain top ASINs that have historically had a certain conversion rate, you will have to ride on some assumptions there as you're seeing your clicks coming in, impressions coming in. So as long as the traffic levels seem strong, do not pull back just because the revenue is not showing up. There is that 14-day attribution delay depending on what product you're using. So that's something that brands should also keep in mind. And this is again a broader question, Shivali, based on, as Helium 10, obviously you have access to so much more data compared to an individual brand or an agency. Are there specific categories that you're seeing being stronger than usual this year? And this is mainly for the folks in the room. If they belong to one of those categories, is there something that they can do more or less of?
This is kind of hard for me to comment on because I work and I speak to sellers of so many backgrounds. I'm just getting started, all sorts of different categories. But I know that historically, and if you look at the statistics, electronics accounts for 33% of all Prime Day revenue globally. Again, this is not just based in the US, but this is all around the world. It also makes sense that people would want the more expensive things when they're discounted, right? Like, why is the whole reason I'm based in America? So what is the whole reason that sometimes we wait for Black Friday? Because we assume things will be discounted then. So anything that's more expensive tends to be moving when you have an event like Prime Day. Right. Home kitchen tends to land top 5 for best selling. You have toys, games, pet products, especially like premium healthcare products that you're thinking of, supplementations. Fashion in 2024 had a 25% increase in conversion rates, particularly the things that were below $50. So I think all around you might end up seeing a boost in general, but as for whether there's something in particular that pulls all the traffic, not really. Not that I know of anyway.
Got it. And this is something that we've gone through this journey. I think we've been with Helium 10 for a long time now. And we started off, there was so much you can do, right? But as a brand that is using Helium 10 directly, or let's say through a smaller team, imagine if they had just, I'm just making this up, right? If they just had 20 minutes to prep, there's no reason behind 20 minutes. That's just a random number. But the point being, if you have very little time and you want to do a lot with Helium 10, where should you start with?
When you say they only had 20 minutes to prep, are they just getting started with Helium 10, or is this like prepping for Prime Day?
Let's answer both.
Okay. Well, if you're just starting out with Helium 10, it really depends on where you are in your journey. And any Helium 10 plan comes with a learning hub, and that's full of so much content that you can use to kind of be guided, right? Hand in hand sort of deal. So you have Freedom Ticket, which is A to Z. It'll teach you how to sell on Amazon. So meaning if you are brand new to selling on Amazon, you're just getting started with Helium 10, you can go check that out, learn how to do your product research, learn how to use the tools, kind of go one by one and not get so overwhelmed because we have so many tools. But if you are somebody who's already on Helium 10 and you're using this for Prime Day, we're talking about specifically Prime Week, then you can do all the things that I've mentioned so far, which is, first of all, download the checklist, the Prime Day checklist, h10.me/Prime Day checklist. That's going to give you 28 different things that you can implement. And so that, I think, is the easiest thing I can say to you to tell you what to do in those 20 minutes. But this will entail things that I've talked about, such as Search Query Analyzer, to figure out how your impressions and your conversion rate is doing compared to the market, how you can leverage that for your ad spend, setting up some of your ads, how to bid, how to use AMC, like just things that will really fine tune how you perform during that week, as well as going in and setting on boost during, like, for specifically keyword tracker, plus activating alerts to make sure if something changes for your products, you'll be in the know, checking your margins with profits. So things like that. But again, all of that, I think if I were to just give you one simple thing, because I think if I tell you, like, do these 5 things, it's not a one thing fits all for everybody. Plus, you might forget the 5 things. So if I can tell you to do anything, just h10.me/checklist, and that'll run you through visually
Perfect.
what to do.
Perfect. And again, if you don't want to do any of that, talk to NetElixir and we'll take care of
Yeah.
this for you.
Yes.
And this is again something I find interesting, and we do this for Black Friday and Cyber Monday on the D2C side as well. Surely, what is that one Prime Day tactic that you were a big fan of, but maybe it's time to sort of revisit that?
Running deals is always fun, but without a profitable margin or an optimized listing, it's really not worth it. So always ensure that whatever you are putting out, your back end can really support it. Last thing you want to do, as Manish said before I really hopped on and started chatting, is make sure that you're not just burning through your inventory trying to chase the Prime Days hype, especially with everything going on. Instead, opt for controlled coupon strategies, short-term bundles with clear upsell paths. Make use of all the space that's really given to you on your listing. If you have A+ content space, put in a brand story. Make sure if you have multiple products, do a comparison chart and see if you can end up increasing that average order value. One of the things that you can do is, instead of offering really deep discounts, 40, 50% right off the bat, is maybe right now you have a raised price, and then later on you have something that is a little bit more conservatively discounted. And so that way, even if you didn't, let's say, submit the exclusive limited time Prime Day deal already, then you can still go in with the coupons and get a badge that will at least drag people's attentions and say, okay, like this has something going on. And so they might be more invested, right? Or want to click into it. Don't neglect your inventory or your cash flow. Those are things that are important. Like I said in the very, very beginning, is make sure you keep the bigger picture in sight. Yes, it's great to move a lot of product, but you don't want to run out of stock, because then at the end of the day, when you do get the stock back, you're going to have to re-rank everything, right? And Amazon doesn't always love that. So that, and then ads, right? Make sure that your ads are doing good. Your 5 maybe primary keywords, they have exact match campaigns, you're running sponsored brands. If you are running any sort of video content, or if you're not running it, you can lean into AI. I mean, think about when AI first came out, there was so much stuff going on that we were like hands, right? Hands, you had 20 fingers going on. And now if you look at it, it's pretty decent in just a year and a half's time. So if you need video content, lean and check out ads, right? For AI. You can look at Amazon's AI Creative Studio, even for something like that. So
Absolutely. And this is again a hypothetical question. If one of the sellers that you work with had the budget just to push one product on Prime Day, what are the things that they should consider before they really narrow down on that one hero ASIN, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, if you've got, I've heard a lot of different things. If you've got a straggler, you can just get rid of that first, so that way it's not eating into your costs. But I've also heard you can, if you have enough inventory to upkeep, then you can run your best ASIN, or the one that's most aligned with the search term that you're looking at. Because of course, last thing you want to do is you have some sort of, let's say, like black coffee table, and you're running one for a pink coffee table. Like there's a disconnect, right, in your audience. So making sure that it's actually aligned with your search term, it has good reviews, and it has a lower return rate. Those are things that really are viewed upon favorably.
Perfect. And the last question, which I know is very tactical, but I think is extremely important. If you were to choose, if you were to rank between lightning deals, bundles, and coupons, what's your list?
I would say coupons to start, because they're quite flexible. They're very visible. They're easy to implement. You can just go in and do them. Bundles, because of course it increases your average order value. As I said before, kind of really leveraging your A+ content, your brand story, comparison charts, differentiating in a crowded field, really being able to show, hey, you know what? This brand is trustworthy. We have lots of things for you. Can increase your brand presence that way. And then lightning deals, kind of, I would place last. Not to say that it's least important, but just if I had to kind of, put them into an order of sorts, then I would put lightning deals after that, because it's only for particular ASINs. You have to get it in way ahead of time. And this is really where you're willing to trade some of the margin for more visibility.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Well. I think great insights, and it's great to hear from someone like Helium 10, because you've been in this space for a long time, and there are thousands of brands that rely on Helium 10, including NetElixir. So I think it's great to hear these insights from someone who's actually done it. Again, just a quick reminder for everyone, all these insights essentially is what you get if you request that complimentary audit that we are doing for all of you. What we will need from you is your brand name on Amazon, and up to 4 competitors. We would love to have at least two, a maximum of 4 competitors, and we would love to come up with some of these insights again using Helium 10 and share it with you in time, so that hopefully that can help you fine tune your Prime Day strategy. Sam, back to you. We can't hear you, Sam.
I always do that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys so much. Let's just take a quick look, see if we have any audience questions. And if you haven't submitted anything just yet, feel free to do so while we have a couple more minutes. Manish, we do have one. So with inventory situation across categories being rather suspect due to the supply chain disruptions caused by the tariff flip-flopping, and now a four-day Prime Day makes it really difficult to plan, especially for SMBs. Any recommendations on that? I know we touched upon it, but maybe we could summarize.
Sure. I mean, and there are a few things that can be done. One, I think, as I think one of the things that Shivali mentioned earlier was not just to focus on your top sellers. There might be some dormant ASINs that you've had which are good, that have a decent number of reviews, and you can say with a certain level of certainty that they will do good. So one of the options there is use those tier 2 or tier 3 ASINs as a complementary offering. And what I mean by that is, one, from a brand defense perspective, showcase them on your primary products PDP, so that some of the customers will also look at that. It also helps you weed out some competition. And secondly, something that we did not discuss a lot today was bundling. And that is something that is happening a lot on Amazon and other platforms now. So find some creative ways to bundle these products with your primary SKUs. One, obviously, it comes with a higher AOV, but that can also take some pressure off your primary ASIN. But yeah, Shivali, would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I know long term, even the visibility outside of Prime Week, I have a lot of seller friends who have tried to opt into other countries, try to see if there's one that really fits their vision for their brand a lot more, or can even just still maintain the quality that they're receiving for the products that they're in. Because, some things India does better, some things China does better, some things Indonesia does better, right? So just kind of seeing if they can kind of navigate where they're receiving their product from. I know one of my closest friends, she has started pulling from Turkey instead of China. So that is something long term that you can consider for the tariff situation. But outside of that, yeah, there's so many other things, making sure you have really great creatives, making sure your ad copy, your ad visuals are emulating the sort of price that you're charging. That can really help you with conversion rates, especially when you're stacking up next to competitors, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody actually knows what your product is like. They only know what you're showing them. So if you are taking a look at your images next to somebody else's images, and yours are the ones that really speak to the customer, well, that's all that's required, right? So if you can, to cover what's happening with the tariff situation, of course, this is not the end all be all. One answer is not going to fix everything. But it's one of the factors that you can look at, is making sure you have every single component of that listing great as a standalone that can't stack up with your competition.
Excellent. So I think, we do last question and then I'll let you both go. So what if someone missed the coupon deadline? Any tips and tricks to be able to capitalize on the platform momentum?
You can still create a discount coupon, as well as, let's say, utilize influencers to drive traffic for your listings. You can run social media ads. Again, on the platform itself, don't worry if you didn't submit a deal. You can still make it work. The coupons will still give you a badge.
Yep. And as something that we covered before, Sam, was you can still use other channels to drive traffic onto Amazon. And we've seen a lot of sellers do this, either driving traffic from TikTok to Amazon or from Meta to Amazon. That's a very highly recommended strategy, especially during Prime Day, because in a way you are also sort of not competing directly on Amazon with some of the high CPCs, especially if you are a small to a mid-sized brand. you might be going head on with some of the larger brands on Amazon. So starting the journey on Meta sort of weeds that out. You're possibly dealing with lower CPMs there and getting the traffic directly onto your PDPs. So it's almost skipping a few steps, and you can still drive those that traffic to Amazon.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both so much for your time, and thank you everyone for having attended. Again, we are offering the complimentary competitor analysis insight report, so please feel free to take advantage of that. Shivali, thank you so much for your time. This has been lovely.
Thank you so much.
Manish,
It's nice to put some faces to the emails.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone, with your Prime Day strategies.